All right. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started today. If you are just entering, because I just let a couple people in, go ahead and answer the question that's on the screen. It's also in the chat. We are asking what kind of vape devices or what brands are you seeing on your campus, so we can compile sort of a list of vape devices that we'll look at a little bit later in our presentation. But if you are here for the Youth Vaping on Campus, you are in the right place. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's PD will go about 90 minutes up until 11:30. We got a lot of information to cover. So let's get started. So if you're new here, the TUPE unit here at LACO, which is the Tobacco Use Prevention Education unit here at the Los Angeles County Office of Education, we are dedicated to serving all 80 LEAs in the county. Some of our primary goals are to build capacity. We do that by offering trainings to staff, school districts. We do outreach in terms of family and student engagement. We also provide educational materials, support, anything that schools need in order to attack this issue of tobacco use and vaping on campuses. My name is Linnell Lujan. I'm a senior program specialist and your presenter today. With us, we also have our program coordinator, Mark. You'll see him in one of the small boxes on your Zoom. We also have our senior program specialist for the Tier 2 grant, Derek Reed, and we also have a new addition to our unit. We have Kira McNeely. She is also on our Zoom today. She will be our senior program activities specialist. She will be working with students and families and parent presentations. And so our team is here today. We are here to help if you have any questions or suggestions, which brings me to our housekeeping. This PD is being recorded today, so if for some reason you needed to step away or leave early, or maybe you wanted to share today's PD with a colleague who couldn't make it, don't fret. We will be sending out all of our resources, our PowerPoint PDF, and our recording to you by the end of the week so that you can rewatch it or share it. We also have closed captioning enabled if needed, and all of our recordings will not only be emailed to you, but it will always live on our Canvas resource page, which I'll go over a little bit later in our presentation. If you have any questions, comments, again, our TUPE unit team is here. Mark will be managing the chat box. So if you have questions in real time or comments, feel free to utilize that chat box. Mark will be able to answer your questions or address any of your comments. We do have a couple of instances today in our presentation where we will be engaging with some questions, kind of like at the beginning of this PowerPoint. So participation and engagement is highly encouraged. It's not going to be anything too high maintenance, just kind of maybe some dropping things into the chat, asking a little bit of questions. And of course, like I said, the presentation will be mailed to all registered participants. So keep an eye out for the email at the end of the week or the beginning of next week, where you can watch the recording and access the slides. All right. So let's go over our agenda for today. We'll be going over a wide range of information. I will try to get as detailed and as deep as time will allow us. However, we won't be able to get into too many things. But if you take a look at that last part, resources and closing, this is where I will tell you about our other upcoming trainings that are very detailed in specific topics and specific programs. So make sure to take a look at that once we get there. Today is really just an overview of some information, but we are always offering free trainings out of our office, whether in person or virtual. And so number 6 is always my favorite because I get to give you all that information and resources that you get to walk away with. So Before we get started, let's take a look at our survey. And again, if you um, added, thank you so much. But we always try to gather some information because if you are working extensively in this world, you know that the vape devices that we see are ever changing. 1 month, this vape device might be really, really popular, and 6 months later, it's obsolete. A new one has bumped it out, right? And so it's actually really, really difficult to track these. One way that we do this is we will take vape devices that have been confiscated by school districts in order to kind of inform us what students are carrying. Um, Maybe about a year ago, what I used to see a lot was puff bars. A few years ago, we probably saw jewels, right? And so it's ever changing. And so we kind of rely on, all of you who are working with students or at least on campuses with students to kind of tell us what are students looking at, what are they using, what are they most attracted to. Stizzy still seems to be a very popular one. We will go over, if you've never heard of Stizzy, a little bit later in our presentation. But I also see wax. Wax is a fairly unknown type of vape devices that I noticed that schools and admin and teachers are unfamiliar with, but do not fret. We will be going over some of those in today's presentation as well. So thank you so much for participating. We're going to go ahead and get started. So let's start at the beginning. E-cigarettes. What are the basics? What are they? What do vape devices look like? How do they work? So e-cigarettes, they are a device used to stimulate the experience of smoking, right? In the very, very beginning, e-cigarettes looked a lot like actual cigarettes. They were the same size, they were white, they looked just like a cigarette. They, of course, have evolved over time. Each e-cigarette will have a battery, some type of coil or atomizer to heat up the cotton or material that is inside. And that cotton or material is an absorbent. So it will absorb the e-juice that is inside and it will burn it to become an aerosol. Now, vape devices get their name from the vapor that it produces. However, that is a misconception. Vape devices and e-cigarettes do not create a vapor. There is no water in the e-juice or the vapor that it creates. What it's actually creating is an aerosol of chemicals. So think of your aerosols in your home: bug spray, perfume, room freshener, hairspray. This is what the user is inhaling once the chemical reaction occurs with the battery heating up the substance. E-liquid ingredients usually include about 3 to 4 things. Nicotine, of course, is one, but not always. Artificial flavors, and propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin. This seems a little bit simple and sometimes maybe harmless. However, if you take a look at labeling on e-juice or e-liquids, you will see the same ingredients: propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, nicotine, artificial or natural flavorings. But what the box does not tell you is that these ingredients go through a chemical reaction once it's heated, and it changes the chemical makeup of the e-juice. Once that coil or that atomizer heats up the juice and creates the aerosol, it changes the chemical makeup. And the following ingredients are what has been found to be in the aerosol that the user is inhaling. Furthermore, these chemicals also include some substances that are found on the FDA harmful or potentially harmful substances that are cancer causing. Things like lead, arsenic, chromium, nickel, acetone, some others that I would never be able to pronounce, and some that are very recognizable, right? Formaldehyde. We know what formaldehyde is normally used for. Acetone, I think of when I take the nail polish off of my nails, right? Lead brings me to the idea of lead paint and how unsafe that is for people. So not only are all these chemicals occurring in the user's body, but some of these chemicals are also very harmful. Another thing that users don't really realize is how many cigarettes or nicotine can be found in the pods or the vape devices. We start off with a pack of cigarettes, which is 20 cigarettes, 20 milligrams of nicotine. Your Juul pod has about twice as much as that. So a student, a person, anybody using one Juul pod, let's say in a week, is actually using the equivalent of 2 packs of cigarettes a week. Your puff bars are about 50 cigarettes, and your Sorin pods are about 90 cigarettes. This seems really high, and it is. However, the Juul pod, the puff bar, Sorin pod, these are all severely outdated. These would have been devices that would have been popular maybe in 2019, 2020 even. Today, what we are dealing with are vape devices like this. Flume, which is kind of outdated now, you have about the equivalent of 400 cigarettes. Hyde, which was a very, very popular device in 2022, 2003, or 23, has about 500 cigarettes. Elf Bar is one of the most popular brands out there right now nationwide. They hold about 650 cigarettes. There are others, like the Mega Puffs, that will hold about 1,000 cigarettes. So when it comes to usage, when it comes to those who are trying to reduce or quit, it's very, very difficult for them to equate how many cigarettes or how much nicotine they are intaking in order to reduce, because the sound of three, uh, you know, 3 boxes of cigarettes a week versus 1 box, well, that doesn't really equate when you're talking about vape devices. One vape device a week, one vape device 2 weeks. And so it's really difficult for those trying to quit. In some cases, we have even heard of students actually switching from vape devices to cigarettes so that they can actually count how many cigarettes they are reducing. However, they are just replacing one health hazard with another, right? If not worse. And this brings me to what we call the triangulum. This is what we call when we're talking about the intersections of tobacco, vaping, and marijuana. Here in the TUPE unit, when we talk about vaping, we are all encompassing. So we're talking about vaping tobacco, vaping marijuana. We're even talking about those who vape caffeine and vitamins, because they do sell those on the market. And so when we talk about vaping, we're talking about this triangulum, the framework for understanding how youth are harmed by this collective impact. And one of those is the Stizzy, right? The Stizzy is a company that exclusively sells cannabis vape devices. You will also see cartridges like this one that are usually, not always, but usually cannabis cartridges. It is very difficult to tell which cartridge and which vape devices are cannabis and nicotine. Sure, you can guess and you can look at maybe the color of the e-juice or the thickness of it, but without packaging and without testing in a lab, we in our schools, our SROs, our nurses, our admin are really unable to tell. In 2020 and 2021, the California Healthy Kids Survey, the CHICS survey, polled 11th graders on their cigarette usage, vaping usage, and marijuana usage. And you can see that vaping and marijuana were very, very high. Remember that when we're saying vaping, it's all encompassing. It's just the practice of vaping, whether that's tobacco, whether that's our nicotine, marijuana, or even, again, some have vitamins in them. But you can see that marijuana is the highest. And so we know that 9.7% of 11th graders reported using marijuana frequently. Frequently means not your students who tried it once, tried it twice, and just didn't really like it, didn't really get into it. This means that they are frequently using, maybe even addicted. 21.4% of 11th graders reported using marijuana at least once, right? So these are those students who maybe tried it, didn't like it, maybe got in trouble and never did it again, but they did dabble in it. So what are the differences? Here we have 3 different types of vape devices. Your vape pens are probably the most common, and this is probably what we're going to see the most on school campuses because they are very small, they're very discreet, they're also inexpensive. These are your simple battery-powered devices. They will use a oil or a liquid cartridge, and this can be anything. This can be nicotine, this could be cannabis, this could be essential oils, anything like that. It is, again, typical, has a battery, has a tank, has an atomizer, or it has a pod. When it's used, the liquid is heated up and sucked into the user's lungs and body, and that aerosol is then exhaled. When we get to our wax pens, they are used in a similar way. They are created in a similar way. The only difference is the substance that goes in it. Instead of an oil or a liquid, it will use a thicker, waxier concentrate, usually cannabis, because the user is trying to get a higher concentration of THC. So your wax pens are going to be a little bit more concentrated and stronger. Same thing happens. There is a battery, there is a chamber for heating, it melts the substance. These will get hotter because it needs a higher heat to melt the wax. But the same occurs. It creates an aerosol, the user inhales it and then exhales it. Once again, your dabs gonna work the same way, but the difference is the substance. Dab pens are thicker, heavier, bulkier. Well, I'm not going to say that you won't see these on your campuses, because you might. These are much more expensive, much harder to hide, again, bulkier and heavier. So they're a little bit of a deterrent in that sense. However, one of the biggest, I guess, attractions to dab pens is that it has a higher concentrate because of its denser substance. So whereas vape pens use oil and like liquid, wax pens use wax, dab pens will use a dab. It is thicker wax than your wax pens. And it is a higher concentrate. So the user can actually have a higher dosage of THC and feel those effects quickly. Because of that, dab pens will also get hotter than your wax pens and your vape pens because it has to be hot enough to melt the dab. So what do these look like? Because I'm not in person, I can't show you my real ones in real life, but this is what we are looking at. You can tell that the vape pens are little, kind of like USB flash drives, which I've noticed that kids today don't know what those are. They never cease to make me feel older than I think I am. But our wax pens, these are kind of a little dangerous in our setting because they look like pens. They look like something that you would find in a student's backpack next to their highlighter and their other pens and pencils. Your dab pens, as you can see, the person holding it is a little bit thicker, bigger. The round thing, the round yellow cartridge right there is a dab. You will pick that up with like a spoon-like, it's called a dab, and drop it into a dish that's kind of connected to the device. And it will heat up the dish, what's in the dish, and create the aerosol. So we've gone over aerosoling or vaping. We know that THC concentrate can be aerosoled. It takes about 5 to 10 seconds to feel the effects of that. A student can get high and feel those effects very quickly. That high will last about 30 minutes to several hours, depending on the student and the concentrate of the substance. But what is normally misinformation is that this is not harmless. A lot of people think that vaping is actually healthier, not harmful, a better way to stop smoking. Um, over 4th of July, I was talking to some older cousins of mine at a 4th of July party, and they were shocked that this was not healthy, that this was not healthier, better than smoking. These are cousins who are maybe about 15 years older than me, and even they are sort of like not in the know that this is not healthy for them, right? But we also see students who are using cannabis the sort of old-fashioned way, right? In the form of joints, blunts, spliffs, pipes, bongs. This is probably what you would normally see students using before Juul became popular. Very similarly, these effects take about 5 to 10 seconds, last anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours. However, the THC concentrate depends on the cannabis. This is usually the bud or the flower, the actual plant. Another way is, of course, dabbing. We just kind of went over that. Dabbing has a higher concentrated THC wax that is heated and then inhaled. Very similar. Takes about 5 to 10 seconds to feel the effects. They can last anywhere from 30 to several hours. However, dabbing, again, is a very, very high concentrate. It could be anywhere from 80% to 90% THC concentrate. So even though the student is feeling the effects in 5 to 10 seconds, the effects vary, right? This is one of the methods that are most associated with emergency room visits because it allows the user to have a more concentrated substance, and students will OD on this. Now, ODing does not necessarily mean death, right? ODing can mean constant and uncontrollable vomiting. It can mean hallucination. Sometimes it can even cause seizures. It can trigger health problems that the user did not normally know. And in youth, it can trigger mental health issues that they would not have encountered maybe later in life. And students who may be going from vaping to dabbing don't really realize that you can't use as much, right? Because it is so concentrated. And so students will overuse an OD and have to go to the emergency room. Another one in our education world that is really, really dangerous are edibles. Not only is it dangerous for the user, but dangerous for us who are charged with keeping our students safe. If you take a look at that bottom right-hand picture, those look like normal everyday snacks. But if you look very, very, very close, you'll see very, very slight differences in the packaging. And all of those pictured there have THC in them. And so for a teacher, an admin, a cafeteria worker, janitor, walking past a student eating a bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos would not know that there is THC in it unless they saw that little tiny white box in the bottom right-hand corner that actually says THC. The other problem is you also have like the picture above it, baked goods, home baked goods, right? How do you know that brownie in the little sandwich baggie doesn't have cannabis in it? When I was a classroom teacher, I had a group of girls who stole brownies from their mom. Their mom made them at home. The girl who stole them did know what was in them. But when the group of girls were seen eating brownies at lunchtime, none of us thought anything of it because they were homemade brownies. It wasn't until about fifth or sixth period when they started acting a little suspicious and weird that we realized that they had ingested a lot of cannabis infused brownies and they were kind of hallucinating and ODing. And so how do we figure this out, right? Like, how can we know without actually testing the food that our students are bringing on campus and eating? The problem with cannabis infused foods is that they are unpredictable. You do not know how much is in the actual food, especially if it's homemade. The effects can start to take place anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours. And this is dangerous because students who may say eat a cannabis infused brownie, 30 minutes later doesn't feel anything, so takes another bite. 60 minutes later, doesn't feel anything, so eats the whole thing. And about 2 hours later, they are in the throes of, hallucinating, vomiting, because they ate too much, not realizing that it takes longer to take effect. This is an easy way to consume marijuana, but it's also very dangerous. So when we're talking about THC and the concentration, here's a quick little clip on the history of THC and how we got to where we are today with such high concentrates.
Got high. Believe me, hippies in the 60s got high. I was there, okay? That weed had this tetrahydrocannabinol in it. And it had 1 to 3% THC. And it's very important to understand this drug worked fine. People got high in the 60s, no problem. They all got the munchies and everything that you talk about. This drug worked, okay? Next thing that happened, the late 60s, was the Vietnam War. And a lot of people went to Vietnam, including me. And the weed in Vietnam was totally different. It was a totally different experience. And the reason was, it was 5 to 10% THC. Now, in order to understand the numbers on this, let's say this was 2% and this is 8%. This weed was 4 times stronger than this weed. And the reason was, it was a different strain. It was all cannabis, but the cannabis in the States was cannabis sativa, where the cannabis in Vietnam was cannabis indica. And so this is a much stronger strain. So what some of the soldiers said was, hey, listen, if we ever brought this back to the States, people go crazy for the stuff back in the States. Those people took those indica seeds and said, listen, let's not leave California. Let's just go up north to Humboldt County and Mendocino County. And they just got trees up there. We'll plant these indica seeds and start ourselves a little marijuana business. Boy, did they ever. So they started to grow just female indica plants, and that bumped it up to 10 to 15% THC. And you guys weren't born yet. Now we got to fast forward about 25 years while they are up there cloning and hybrids and fertilizing and everything else, so that the common weed in our little Northern California is between 15 and 20% THC. Compare that to what hippies were getting high on here. This is a whole other ball game of drug here. And wax is right around 50% THC. And I don't want to go through all of the ones here, but I'll tell you the last one that you end up with is a dab. And a dab is 95% THC. This is the level of where you guys are coming in to this thing here right now. And not only are you coming in on this level, but you're also coming in a teenage time. This is a whole other ball game of what it does.
So that was Ralph Cantor talking to a group of high school students to kind of explain the history of THC, but also the dangers of it, right? As he says, back in the 60s, you know, yes, hippies used cannabis, but it wasn't as strong as it is today. And for those youth, they don't really realize that the level that they're coming into today are at possibly 95%. And so that kind of gives an idea of just how concentrated a lot of these vape devices currently are. So that brings us to youth vaping. What do the statistics say? What are we looking at in terms of data nationally, statewide, and even within our own county? So the National Youth Tobacco Survey of 2023 actually found a difference in the data. We are waiting for the 2024 data to come out, which usually is released in October. So if you are interested in that, keep an eye out next month. But in 2023, we found that there was a decrease among high school students' usage. In fact, in 2022, it went from 16.5% down to 12.6%, which is great. It means that nationally, the work that we do here in the TUPE unit, other county offices, in school districts, in public health, we are doing a great job at helping high school students either reduce, decrease, or never try vaping. However, we did see an increase among middle school students. In 2022, the numbers were at 4.5%, and in 2023, it jumped up to 6.6%. Now, the NYTS only reports on 6th through 12th graders. So my assumption would be that if we had started off with our eyes set on high schoolers, that meant that we were doing this work maybe not as heavily in middle school. And if the middle school numbers are jumping, then that might mean that the elementary schools might be increasing as well. Because the NYTS does not poll or survey students younger than 6th grade, we don't necessarily have data for that. But this would be my assumption based off of the trends that we're seeing here, and also the work that we do when we work with school districts and schools here in LA County. So when it comes to addiction, we also found that more than 1 in 4 students currently using e-cigarettes use the product every day. This is an indication of students possibly addicted or on their way to being addicted to vaping. More than 1 in 3% of users report using e-cigarettes at least 20 out of the last 30 days. So not only are we looking at our middle schools and possibly our elementary schools, we're also looking at the frequency in terms of how many students are becoming addicted to this. We know that students are addicted to flavors. Since this is the national survey, there are other states that still sell flavored e-cigarettes. Here in California, we do not. It was banned, which we will get into a little bit later. But as you can tell, Elf bars are the most popular in 2023, leading the charts at 56.7%. Now, here's a little interesting tidbit for you. Elf bars are outlawed imports in the United States. They are not allowed to be imported into the United States. They are not allowed to be sold here in the United States. And yet they are the most popular vape device here among youth in our nation. This is all to say that users, whether they're youth or adults, are going to find ways to get the thing that they are addicted to or interested in. The other thing is the popularity of vape devices. These Elf bars, this brand, which also goes by the name Creative Bars, believe it's what it's called. They're sold in any smoke shop. Walk into any smoke shop today and you will find Elf bars, even though they are outlawed to being imported into our country. When we talk about California youth, our California Tobacco Youth Survey polled students in 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade. Those students in 10th and 12th grade said that they use tobacco products 6.6% in the last 30 days, but 20.3% said that they used it at least once or twice. When it came to cannabis, 10th and 12th grade students said that they used cannabis 8.8% in the last 30 days. And 21.4% said that they ever used it. Again, just tried it, maybe didn't like it, got in trouble and never tried it again. When it came to 8th graders, you had 4.0% using tobacco. And then you had 3.1% using cannabis within the last 30 days. 9.3% said that they ever used it. One of the good statistics out of this survey said that about half of the current vapers reported that they were attempting to quit vaping in the last 12 months. And around the same amount said that they intended to quit vaping. So that's great. Those students who are intending to vape or stop vaping or have tried to stop or tried to reduce, those are good reports. One of the questions that I get a lot when working with school districts is, why are students doing this, right? Why are they using? The common misconception is peer pressure. And while peer pressure is one reason, it is not the main reason. The main reason students have mostly said that they use vape devices is because they feel anxious, stressed, or depressed. Now, this is huge, especially after 2020 COVID. I was still a classroom teacher. We all went remote. Students were learning on their computers. They were not allowed to leave their homes. They were not allowed to see their friends, go and do the things that they enjoyed, while facing very scary instances, right? A lot of families, especially in lower working class communities, a lot of families saw death, loss of jobs, loss of income, some even loss of homes. I had a student who lost her father, her grandmother, and an aunt. And it was sort of like she had almost nowhere to go because all the adults in her life had passed away. And so students found quick, easy, and inexpensive ways to self-medicate. Instead of turning to healthy coping skills, they turned to vape devices. The vape devices made them feel calm, made them feel good, but only temporarily. And so this tells us that students are really trying to, again, self-medicate, and they're using unhealthy coping skills. Another reason is to get high or buzzed from the nicotine. 28.3% said because a friend used them. Maybe this is part of the peer pressure or trying to fit in. And 20% did to do tricks. This always, I always see confused faces or surprised faces when I present this in conferences and workshops. And what some people don't know is that there is a huge competitive side of vaping. Um, they are competing against each other in terms of how big the flume can be when they exhale. Some smoke shops will even sponsor users to go and compete. Sponsorship looks like free vape devices, free products, free registration into these companies. And just like video games, I know I have some nephews and nieces and cousins who want to be either YouTubers or competitive video gamers, right? This is the same thing, competitive vaping. Common reasons. Where does this data come from? It actually comes from just vaping in general. So it doesn't necessarily mean nicotine or cannabis. It's all encompassing. So just vaping in general, because users can get like a feeling of relief or even a buzz from nicotine or cannabis. So when it comes to this data, which comes from the National Youth Tobacco Survey of, I think it was 2022, we're talking about vaping in general. Sure. So who's being targeted? This, I think it's an Instagram story or reel, was sent to our offices from an admin with one of the school districts that we work with. And it's a little fuzzy, but if you can see, who knew Mercedes-Benz car key vapes existed? Me, not me. And can't really tell how young that user is in that video, but definitely younger than me. Um, and just the fact that this reel, even if this user is of age, the fact that this is on Instagram, right? My 11-year-old niece could see this. My 8-year-old nephew could see it if they're just on Instagram. This is being publicized and it's being seen by users, right? And it begs the question, if they are creating vape devices that are discreet, they look like key pods, pens, highlighters in some instances, who are they targeting? Because I, as a 41-year-old adult, I don't need to hide having a vape device, right? If I am a vape user, I am of age. It is not illegal for me to have a vape device. Why would I need it to be discreet? That begs the question, who are they trying to attract here? To kind of bring it into better terms, this one looks like a normal Sharpie marker. In fact, it actually is just a normal Sharpie marker. But what has happened was the user pulled out the felt tip and the ink and replaced it with a 3D printed holder where you can insert the cartridge, and it is a fully functioning vape device. If I saw this with the cap on and on my student's desk, I'd think nothing of it. I would walk right past it. So that and products like this, yes, that is a vape device. I still don't even understand where the aerosol comes from. Those tips right there, I don't know if there's a hole in it. I've looked online to see how this works. I actually think that the holes are inside where the felt tip is, but it looks exactly like a highlighter. It even says highlight on it, right? So with that said, with the Sharpie, with these school supplies that look like harmless school supplies but are actually vapes, it begs the question, how can we tell? How can we, as adults, again, on campuses who are charged with keeping our students safe, how can we tell? Really quick, if you can utilize the chat box once again, take a look at this picture of ordinary, normal office or school supplies. Hidden in this picture are some vape devices. I want you to take a look and drop into the chat a number. How many vape devices can you find in this picture? Go ahead, take a moment, put your thoughts in the chat. How many can you see there? How many do you think are in that picture? 6 to 7. All right. 2, at least 3. 8, 6. Okay. All of the above. Yeah. 11. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you this. That was a trick question. So first off, we've got one right here. This is a wax pen. Like I said, looks exactly like a writing pen. This one right here looks like a highlighter, but that actually is a vape device. Another wax pen. And this one looks like maybe it might be a highlighter or a whiteout cartridge, or even sometimes they look like those flavored drops that you put in water. And I say it's a trick question because how do I know that that orange accent highlighter wasn't altered like our Sharpie? Or the orange highlighter next to it that doesn't have any writing on it might actually be one of those highlighters, right? And so when I say it's a trick question, it kind of is, because even though those vape devices are vape devices, how do I know some of these haven't been altered to be a vape device? And I say all of this because we don't actually know. We can't spot these because they are so discreet. They are so unassuming. Gone are the days where we're looking for students standing under a plume of smoke, smelling like something burned, finding cigarette butts. You are not going to find any of that because the aerosol vapor dissipates very quickly. Vapes do not smell like something is burning or smoke. It actually smells fruity or sweet, like body spray. Um, and again, you're not going to find any remnants like a cigarette butt because it's just a quick little vape device. So what we need to shift our thinking is looking for the telltale signs or the symptoms. Vapor aerosols are either odorless or sweet smelling. It's easy to conceal. We need to look at those symptoms. So again, from a teacher standpoint, because I used to be a teacher, letting students go to the restroom and having them come back completely different. I used to teach high school, and I had a student who I noticed that every day I had them, they went to the restroom at the same exact time during that period. They took unusually long, but not too long for me to have to send like an SRO to go look for them. And I noticed that every time they came back from the restroom, their friend who was in the class next door was also going to the restroom, and they were passing each other in the hallway. And what we found out was there was a group of students who had timed it perfectly that when one went to the restroom and came back, their friend was on the way to the restroom. They'd pass them the device. So now my student doesn't have that device on their person at all when they return back to my class, groggy, bloodshot eyes. And this happened with maybe about a group of 4 students. How did I notice that? I'm not actually sure. But again, it was very, very methodical, and it happened every period, every day. These are the things we need to look for. Change in behavior and mood, drowsiness, coordination issues. Now, again, as a teacher, I understand this isn't always going to mean that our students are vaping. This can also mean that our students had just a lousy night and they're really tired. Maybe they're going through some personal issues at home with family, with friends. Sure, it can mean that as well. But that just means that we need to keep in check with our students and keep in contact with them and notice any differences, because it might be one thing, but it might also be vaping as well. So where are students getting these? Again, this is another question that I get a lot. And sometimes the common misconception is that all students are getting them from their family and friends. They must be, right? Because it is illegal for students to have vape devices. However, while this is true, this isn't largely true for everyone, right? Our students are getting them from members in their household, maybe an older sibling, an older cousin. Sometimes they even take them from their parents or grandparents without them knowing. They can also be getting them from classmates, from neighbors, from older siblings, friends. Another place is social media. We know that all social media like TikTok, Instagram, all of those have algorithms. And those algorithms show content based on the user's interest, their age, and what kind of content they interact with. And so companies and these algorithms might be showing these things to our youth. And sometimes they are selling them through TikTok. Sometimes it's kind of something local where meet me at the parking lot of this store and I'll sell you this vape device for X amount of dollars, which can also be dangerous because our students don't know exactly who they are talking to on social media. Another place is online. And this can also be dangerous because one, again, who are they talking to online? Two, where are they buying these? Are they buying them from stores out of state, out of the country? And if so, are those vape devices counterfeit? If they are counterfeit, they are much more dangerous than your typical vape devices because we do not know what is in them. The FDA does not know that they exist. We don't know what kind of batteries are in them. Sometimes they explode. And so if you can kind of see that picture, the first vape device that you see is the Puff Bar. The Puff Bar is very, very popular. It's a very popular company, but the other three following it are counterfeit. And you could tell that they're made to look exactly like the Puff Bar's device. Even their packaging and some of their logos look exactly the same. And so it kind of gives the user an air of this is legit. This is safe. It looks just like the Puff Bar. And in fact, they are counterfeit. One of the most surprising data reports in 2022, a poll taken of 13 to 18-year-olds asked them where they got their devices from. And 40% actually said that they bought their vape devices from a smoke shop or a gas station. Well, smoke shops and gas stations are supposed to check age. This poll indicates one of two things are happening or not, right? Smoke shops are not checking age, or they are, but they're still selling it to the minor for a profit. And so this just begs the question of how are smoke shops being in how are these laws being enforced with smoke shops and gas stations, right? Some cities do really good jobs at shoulder taps and going in and checking on age verification processes. But with so many smoke shops popping up everywhere, that can be really difficult for some communities, for some safety departments. And so it's very surprising that students, youth, are getting their vape devices from actual retail shops. And this also begs the question of how many smoke shops are around our schools, our parks, our YMCAs, our Boys and Girls Clubs. How close are our students to these, and which ones are the ones who are selling to minors? I can say, working with schools and school districts, that there are definitely smoke shops that do, and all the students know which smoke shop and which worker is very kind to students when it comes to selling them vape devices. Um, the Ed West had done a survey on what which students are more likely to use vape devices. And what they found was that those students who were experiencing chronic sadness, which, just to clarify, chronic sadness means that a student is feeling sad or depressed um, constantly for like a period of 30 days or more. This is not your sadness of today was just a bad day, I didn't pass my test, maybe like I'm going through a breakup, I'm having family issues. This is chronic sadness that is 30 days or more. They are dealing with something maybe really big. Those also with suicide ideations and emotional distress, all were likely to use vape devices more than those who were not experiencing those. Those who were experiencing life satisfaction and optimism were less likely to use vape devices. This is just another data point and another indication that students' usage is directly correlated with their social emotional growth, with their mental status, with their ability to use healthy coping skills over unhealthy coping skills, and how they are using vape devices to self-medicate. The same goes for students who, I should have changed that, sorry, which students are more likely to use marijuana. And as you can see from our previous slide, that the numbers are almost exact. Those who found to be experiencing chronic sadness, suicide ideation, and emotional distress are more likely to use vape devices than those who experience life satisfaction and optimism. So how do young people take these health risks? One, we've already gone over, personal. These are factors from within oneself. They are feeling depressed, isolated, sadness, anxiety, and they are using vape devices to self-medicate. Interpersonal are factors between people. This can mean peer pressure, um, access when they go to parties, friends who are doing it, maybe the cool factor of, I don't really like it, but I want to be cool and I want to be accepted. So I'm going to use vape devices. This is the interpersonal part. And then there's the social environmental factors. This is factors within the local community and beyond. How many advertisements are students encountering when they are on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, even movies and music videos? How many of the characters or the people in those videos are smoking or vaping? Also, how many smoke shops are near their schools and their parks? How many billboards or advertisements are they passing on the highway or the freeway or the streets when they're on their way to grandma's house or on their way to school? Another factor is what kind of policies or lack thereof are within their community. Some communities have bans and policies on tobacco use within public spaces or in multi-living spaces like apartments, and some communities don't. So how are those communities really making that sort of accessible to our youth, and how much are they exposed to it? As mentioned earlier, Senate Bill 793 went into effect January of 2023. And this actually prohibits the sales of menthol tobacco, flavored electronic smoking devices, and flavored electronic smoking fluids or e-juices within California. So in theory, any smoke shop in California or company, online company in California, should not be selling flavored tobacco related products. Does that mean our youth and even California citizens can't get their hands on it? No, right? Um, I know somebody who has a friend who is a cross-country trucker, and they bring back boxes of menthol cigarettes for their friends and family because you cannot get them here in California. And so those who are addicted to these products are always going to try to find a way to get their hands on it. But for our youth, who may be addicted to the gummy bear flavored vapes, the way that they're going to get their hands on it are going to be through counterfeit or even dangerous means. And so this brings up another issue of how dangerous these vape devices are. Even the acquiring of banned products is dangerous. Now, with all that said, right, I want to point out that there is a bright side, right? All of the statistics and all of the numbers I've gone through, we still have 66% of high schoolers and 88.7% of middle schoolers who have never used a tobacco product. They've never tried it, they've never touched it, they've stayed away from it. And those numbers are high, they're good, right? That doesn't mean that we're ignoring the other percentage, but these are good. These are good numbers, right? And most youth who currently use tobacco products are not daily users. They are not addicted. They are not using it every single day. And we want to keep it that way, right? We want to keep them away from being addicted and hopefully reduce to not using at all. Because that brings us to our health concerns. What are the health risks associated with youth vaping? We know through research that the young person's brain is developing up until they are the age of 25. And so when students are using vape devices, whether it's nicotine or cannabis, it rewires and changes their brain. It affects their brain development. And in some instances, especially with cannabis, it will stop the growth or stunt the development of the brain. It also makes the heartbeat faster due to a fight or flight response. It can increase acid reflux, and it can also cause lung and breathing damage. We're also very concerned with addiction, right? The cycle, nicotine is highly addictive, so is cannabis. And what that means is the human brain can develop such a strong dependence on the drug that the nicotine user can no longer control their desire or smoking behaviors. The cycle of nicotine starts with bringing nicotine into the body. In this case, it comes as an like inhaling of the cigarette or the vape. Nicotine will then enter the brain and it activates all the pleasure centers of the brain. It tells the person, this feels good, my anxiety is gone, my depression is gone, this is great. But after that level of nicotine in the body drops quickly, not only do they feel their anxiety and depression again, it comes back stronger. And the drop in nicotine levels causes the body to have a strong craving for that nicotine. They want it even more, they want it faster, and they want more of it and more frequently. And this cycle is powered by the body's biological reaction to nicotine or cannabis, and it isn't controlled by the person vaping. It's the addiction, it's those pleasure centers wanting to have that pleasure again. 3 out of 4 teens who smoke or vape in high school will still be smoking as adults. Among students who currently use any tobacco product, 5% reported experiencing cravings for the tobacco within the past 30 days, and 19.35% reported wanting to use tobacco products within 30 minutes of waking up. These are indications of addiction. We're also concerned with EVALI or VAPI cases, which EVALI and VAPI are used interchangeably. EVALI means e-cigarette or vaping associated lung injury, and VAPI is vaping associated pulmonary injury. That's probably the term you will hear most often. And what this is there are symptoms of coughing, shortness of breath, chest pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, fatigue, fever, and weight loss. These are severe lung illness and sometimes even death associated with e-cigarettes. As you can see in our graphic here, nationally, there have been 68 deaths due to VAPI, one of which has been in LA County. So before we move on to our last parts, we have one more little engagement piece for you. Drop in the chat how many vape devices you can spot in this backpack. There's a lot of stuff in there, but hidden within are some vape devices. How many do you think are in this everyday purse, backpack, whatever, whoever the user is? How many can you see? 5, 3, 6, 6, 7, 8, 5. All right. Here you can see that there are 8 vape devices. Sure, they're all different kinds. Number 2 is one of your big bulky kind. They're called tanks. These are the ones normally associated with competing. But you have some of your e-juice in there. You see a pen. You even see the Sharpie one hidden there, number 4 under the keys. So again, this is kind of just another indication of how easy it is to not only overlook them, but to also mistake them for something else. So what does that mean in terms of youth vaping on our campuses and in our schools? Let's take a look at what statistics and data say and what EdCode says. So if you take a look here, we are looking at the county versus the state suspension data. And you could see in 2018, suspension rates in LA County were 2%, statewide 3%, 3.5%. So LA County, we're doing pretty good, right? 2019 reduced to 1.3% in our county, 2.5% statewide. And then 2020 got a little crazy, right? We all know what happened in 2020. Kind of difficult to suspend students who are at home, right? Learning remotely for most of the school year. But the big question was, how are things going to get back to normal once we return from remote learning? And as you can see here in this data, in 2022 through 2023, our suspension rates went back up. And in fact, they went higher than they were in 2018. These are suspensions for lots of reasons, right? Not just vaping. These are suspensions just in general. But when it comes to the work that we do, especially in education and with students, we want to reduce our suspension rates. How do we do that, especially when we're talking about vape use and tobacco use? Well, a person who's been punished is not less inclined to behave in a given way, right? At best, he learns how to avoid punishment. A student who struggles to read is not sent home and expected to return back reading fluently, right? So why would we send a student home who's been caught vaping and expect them to come back and be vape free? When it comes to EdCode, there is one mandatory reason that a student should be suspended or expelled when it comes to tobacco use or vaping, and that is unlawfully selling a controlled substance. Of course, if that is happening on our schools and it is found out, that is a mandatory expulsion or suspension instance. However, EdCode also says that there's limited discretion, or the principal must recommend expulsion or suspension when unlawful possession of any controlled substance, except for the first offense, occurs. Now, mind you, take a look at that last box. The school must provide evidence of one or both of the following additional findings. They have to prove that other means of correction were not feasible, and or that suspension or expulsion was used due to the nature of the act, and that the students present cause some danger or physical safety issues. EdCode also says that there's a broad discretion, or the word may, that the principal may recommend expulsion in these instances. But once again, evidence that other means of correction were not feasible, or that they repeatedly failed, or that the student presents danger, or physical safety to others has to be proven. This is all to say that when it comes to our students who are vaping on campus, we always want to try to use other means of correction. This is not limited to what you see on the screen, but it can include conferences, referrals to outside programs, check-ins and checkouts, positive behavior supports. Any range of alternatives to suspension can be used, so that we do not suspend our students and, once again, send them home thinking that that's going to fix it and they're going to come back a non-user, right? AB 599 is a new bill that hasn't passed yet, but it's going through the motions. It focuses on suspensions and expulsions in schools, particularly related to students' use of tobacco products. This bill prohibits the suspension or expulsion of students for using or possessing tobacco or nicotine products, within certain exceptions related to e-cigarettes and vaping. This legislation actually aims to address issues around how school disciplines students, emphasizing an alternative approach rather than using punitive measures like suspension and violations. Currently, the bill is paused. It's in progress, but it's paused while the committee reviews the fiscal impact before deciding whether to advance it. So this is a bill that is coming through the process that might be passed within the near to kind of late future. But this is something that is currently happening, that people are trying to move forward with removing this from ed code so that we can offer our students more support rather than punitive measures. Tobacco use and vaping use should be addressed in some way or form, and it probably is, in any one of these existing structures and systems. You can also find it probably in your discipline matrix or your student parent handbooks. It's addressed in our California health standards. It can be addressed in PBIS and MTSS. There are structures that are already in place that can either be slipped in there or is already there for you. So let's finish with our tiered programs. You have a range of different resources at your disposal. When it comes to prevention, here is some curriculum that all students can use and learn from in order to either reduce, stop, or never try these products. Intervention are for some of your students who might be being caught and have to go through some sort of program like Why Vape, Healthy Futures, or Brief Intervention. And then cessation is really for your students who might be addicted. They've been caught a few times, or they've come to your mental health interns or nurse and say, I need help. And what some of these look like are lessons that have already been fully formed for your teachers to deliver as is or to edit as needed. Stanford has vaping lessons that encompass a middle school, high school, and elementary. They are fully formed with learning objectives. They have PowerPoint formats, talking points, discussion guides, and they also have lessons on cannabis as well. These are mostly for your middle and high schools, but I believe that they're working on elementary school or elementary level as well. Catch My Breath is another one that encompasses 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th through 12th grade. These are also come with learning objectives. They're standard aligned. They come with PowerPoint presentations. This one comes with a workbook and student educator guides with answer keys and checking for understanding opportunities. When it comes to our intervention, one thing we need to talk about is, what does your school have the capacity for, right? How does it fit into your progressive matrix system? How are you planning to track this in terms of referrals, participation, completion? And how well does it align to your student or your staff capacity and current resources. Some of the ones that we refer to are brief intervention, which is staff-led. You have your staff trained. We offer free trainings here. And that could mean a counselor, a mental health intern, and they would be the ones working with students 2 to 3 sessions. Healthy Futures is also self or staff-led. They have an asynchronous version and then a staff-led version. And Y-Vape is a partner. Y-Vape would be a referral that you would refer your students out to in order to have them have sessions with students to talk them through some of their instances of using. So that brings me to our resources. We have so many things to help you at your school sites, which includes trainings for some of these intervention and prevention programs. Our next training is September 26th. This is going to be on the prevention curricula. So we will go over Stanford's vaping and cannabis lessons. We will go over catch my breath lessons, what they have to offer, how they work, how they were created. All of our trainings are free. And don't worry, in a little bit, I'm going to show you where to find all of these so you can register. We also have another upcoming training for peer programs. If you are looking to build youth engagement or peer programs on your campus, we are having a 2-day training. This one is in person, but it is free. And this will encompass how you get started with peer programs, how to recruit, how to have the program keep going. We also have a second part to training that we had last week on health disparities and how to engage students from student focus groups in order to close the gap of health disparities on our campuses. We also have a specific training on Stanford's prevention lessons. This one, once again, is free. It is in person. And this one is just on the lessons provided by Stanford. If you are interested in training your staff on brief intervention, we have one coming up on November 19th and 20th. Again, it is free. This one is online. It is virtual. And where can you find all of these trainings and more? If you go to some of the links that have been dropped in the chat, you will find the flyers for all of the trainings I just went over. But this link will also take you to our training hub. This is where you will find all of our trainings that are upcoming and any trainings that we will be offering or adding in the near future. You can go here to find the flyer, information, time, and the link to register. As always, our offices are available to you. We offer educational materials, maybe for your next parent night, your next staff meeting. We also are willing to come out to you and meet with your district admin, teachers. We're willing to do trainings, meet you where you are on your journey to tobacco use prevention and intervention. We are always available. And with that said, you can always contact us at our emails or our phone number, and of course, our website. I want to thank you all for being here today. I know it was a lot of information, but I hope to see you at some of our future trainings to kind of go into depth in some of the things that I covered today. I will stick around if there are any questions, and if not, I hope you all have a great day.